Hello, everybody, and welcome to Loops. My name is Kevin Forsythe, and on this podcast, we discuss God's Word, His church, and everyday life, always asking the question of how does this loop back into our life and God's kingdom? Our mission here at Loops is to empower others in their walk with God through kingdom-minded discussion. Now, I know there hasn't been an episode released in the last couple of months, and I wanted to focus this episode on explaining the reason for that and kind of give some background. And I'm actually going to be sharing my own testimony here, interviewed by the co-host of Loops, Brother Jeremy Brock. So just to give you some background before we get into the actual episode, early last year, I was diagnosed with stage 1 testicular cancer and went through some procedures. Everything was good for about a year. And earlier this year, there were more tests done that showed that the cancer had spread. So the last couple of months, I've been undergoing chemotherapy treatment, and I just recently finished treatment in the last couple of weeks. Got my hair coming back, my energy is back, and I'm excited to be back on Loops to share my testimony. And I'm not only going to share, how God got me through it with all the prayers and all the support that I had, but God did a miracle in the midst of my treatment, and I'm going to share God's greatness, His power, and His mercy through trials and give my own testimony of it. God is great. And I will just say that if you're going through any situation or trial, God hears you, He hears your prayers, and He sees what you're going through, and He has not left you. Trust in Him, and He will bring you through any situation. So I hope this testimony encourages you, and thank you so much for joining. Welcome to Loops.
Praise the Lord, everyone. It's good to be back on the Loops podcast. We had a break for some time, and that was unintentional, and we're going to get into that a little bit. But I'm so excited that we are resuming this Loops podcast, and I'm thankful for this podcast. I'm here today with our host, who will be doing the biggest part of this segment, and we will find out why soon enough. But Kevin Forsythe is here with us, and there were some things that transpired this year. Actually, it started in 2023, and it kind of put things on pause, but God is a good God. And so I'm going to turn this over to Brother Kevin Forsythe, and he's going to take it away from here.
Thank you, Brother Jeremy. It's a little bit of a different type of episode, but as I say in the intro of this episode, I wanted to give a little bit of background on why there's been a gap. I know there was a gap last year as well, and as you mentioned, this whole process started last year. So as I said in the intro, I was diagnosed with testicular cancer, stage 1, early last year, and I'm just going to share my testimony of everything that has happened last year, the gap of last year, and then everything that has happened in the last couple months, why we have had the gap that we've had. But I first want to thank everybody for all the support. You know who you are. If you supported us, me and my family, through prayers, through food, through just reaching out, it meant more than you know. We wrote a card to the church here. It was a very isolating time. I couldn't get sick. I didn't want to be hospitalized and things like that happening. And so it could have been an isolating time, but it wasn't. It didn't feel like that. So thank you, Brother Jeremy, for you reaching out for support, and then everyone else that has supported. Greatly, greatly appreciate it. So I want to start out kind of from the beginning of last year. Early, I think it was February of last year, noticed there was a mass. It was, now me and my wife like to think worst case scenario. We don't like to go to the doctor and think, oh, well, it's nothing, it's not gonna, and then we get shocked by this news. So we were kind of expecting something. We were hoping for the best. Going into the doctor, they do an examination, schedule an ultrasound, and the results came back, and it just had a note in there saying suspicious for. I forgot the exact word. I think it just says suspicious for cancer, something like that. And it really hit us hard. I actually used the word that I didn't know. I looked it up and it said cancer. And I kind of Google diagnosed myself at that point. I don't suggest doing that, by the way, because you'll just go down some dark paths on that. Well, then they referred me to a urologist that focuses in that area. And during that appointment, he was reviewing the ultrasound, reviewing the other tests, and he was very serious. He was a great doctor, very to the point. He wasn't sugarcoating anything. He goes, "This looks like it is cancer. I've seen a lot of this, and I know this is, hearing the big C word is not something that everyone wants to hear, but this looks like it is it."
Wow.
And it was that moment, actually leaving that appointment, is when everything truly hit me. The emotions. I didn't really have too much of a, I don't know, I don't want to use the word breakdown, but it was more of like reality hit me that this is actually, at my age, I mean, I figured something like this could happen in the future, but being 29 and being hit with this, that was the point that it kind of hit me the hardest. So he told me the next steps were surgery, and then, we'll kind of go from there. But I had to get some tests done that day to see if it had spread. He wanted to know if it spread up into, my stomach or chest area. So I think that's why reality hit, because it was the unknown. I didn't know what to really expect. I just walked out, okay, I've got to do, he has an urgent CT scan, chest x-ray. I got to go there right now to get it all checked. And I should get the results today. So kind of the uncertainty was all up in the air. And I actually had a Loops podcast scheduled for that day with Brother CJ.
Yeah.
And I had to call him and tell him the news. Like, hey, this is what's going on. I'm sorry I can't be there to do this. And of course, he was just very supportive and praying. One of the first to actually find out of everything that was going on. Well, results came back that it hadn't spread, so I was very thankful for that. It was still at stage 1. I went through surgery. My doctor gave me the next steps of either one round of chemo, and this is March, because I was diagnosed officially on March 31st of last year. Mm-hmm. And so he gave me, after I came back from surgery and was recovered, said you can have one round of chemo to kill off anything if anything else had spread, or surveillance. And I didn't want to go through chemo. I've heard about it. I've had one of my aunt has gone through it. Many people that I know have gone through it. And I just did not want to go through that. And I said, I'll take the chances. I believe God. That was it.
Yeah.
That was my battle. It didn't really feel like it, though, because I noticed it the next week. I went in, and a week later I was in and out of surgery. So within about 2.5 weeks, everything seemed to be done. And I was like, okay, well, that wasn't too bad. I was like, okay, that was the challenge. That was the battle. And I prayed, God, please don't let it come back. I'm choosing surveillance. Well, a year passes and everything was great. There was a pause, and we just started the podcast. And I will kind of inject here. It was a few months prior to starting or finding out, actually about 2 months, that we had started the podcast.
Yeah.
Worked up for 6 months to get this going. I was super excited. We had
redecorated everything.
Yeah. It wasn't this decoration.
Yes.
It was the first iteration of Loops.
Yeah.
Got everything going, and then this hit. And it put a pause on for just, a couple of weeks. I had all this stuff lined up, and I felt like as soon as I got going on this new ministry, something hit me. Mm-hmm. Got back up and going for about a year. All the end of last year, we got some stuff done. Everything seemed good. I had 6-month checkups and then a year checkup, which was this year in February. Everything seemed good. There's a slight scare end of last year, but everything was fine until I noticed something in my lower stomach earlier this year. And of course, like I told you, worst case scenario, I'm like, okay, I have actually my annual CT scan was a week later. I was like, okay, I'll just wait. I'll email my doctor saying, hey, this is what I noticed. I don't think it's anything, but I know I just saw you a couple months ago. It's no big deal. And actually, I kind of brushed it off a little bit. It was like, God's not going to allow it to come back. I mean, he healed me. I believe it's gone. Well, the results came back saying that there's a peach-sized mass that is very suspicious for metastatic disease. And for anyone that doesn't know what metastatic disease is, if a cancer spreads to another part of the body, if it spreads to the chest, lungs, it's not lung cancer now, it's metastatic testicular cancer in the chest, in the lungs, etc. So they said it is very suspicious for metastatic disease. Well, again, they don't call you when they give you these results. They just put it on your, at least with Kaiser, they put it on your app and I read it. I'm like, oh, wow, okay. I was kind of expecting, not expecting, preparing for something like this. I was hoping it wasn't. But met with my urologist. He actually, I think, called me the next day, didn't even schedule an appointment, and said, hey, this is what's going on. Like, this does look like it. I'm going to refer you to an oncologist, which was the chemotherapy or cancer-focused doctor. And met with him, but maybe 2 weeks later, and he laid out the whole outline of the treatment of everything that was going to happen. And he told me because of the size of the mass, you're going to have to go through 4 rounds of, they call it BEP, chemotherapy treatment. There's a lot of different types of chemo, and my regimen was BEP. And I was hoping, because there's a different lower grade version of this chemo, but he gave me the highest version, highest amount of rounds. It could have been higher, but 4 rounds, I was expecting hopefully 3.
How much is in a round? So explain that.
1 round is 3 weeks. The first week is 5 days in a row, 6 to 7 hours a day. The next 2 weeks are just 1 day, maybe like an hour, 2 hours. But that first week, I call them power weeks, just mental thing to kind of power through it. But it's a very intense regimen. And I wasn't expecting that. And I was like, okay, well, I guess this is what's going to happen. I mean, I kind of, honestly, in the back of my mind, I kind of prepped myself throughout the previous year for it spreading. I don't know if it was me doubting that God had did it. It's something that I'll never know. Ultimately, God did a miracle in the end of it. But I like to prep for, like I said, the worst. And it's like, if these scans come back, how is my mindset going to be? How am I going to emotionally and spiritually embrace this? Well, I had found out, he had told me all the details, the plans. I had about 2.5 weeks between meeting with him before I start my treatment, which was March 18th. Well, on March 3rd, an evangelist from Brazil, Brother Ryan Thompson, had come and preached at the church here. And he had preached a message on necessary detours. And immediately, as soon as he gave the title, I knew, okay, God, this is for me. And he told this whole story. If you want to go listen to it, you can go to the GBFPC YouTube channel and check it out. It was March 3rd of this year. An amazing message, but I knew God was speaking to me for a reason. And I think it was at that point that after that message, my mindset kind of changed. I said, God, I know you could have healed me before. I know you could have prevented that from spreading. I thought that was my whole journey, but you allowed it to come back. And my whole life, I know a lot of people believe this, but for me, what kind of gives me peace in trials, and I had always thought if I had ever gone through a health trial, how would I respond to that? And it hit me, and for me, I know everything happens for a reason. God allows everything in life to happen for a reason, whether that's good or whether that's bad. And my favorite book in the Bible is Job. Always has been. I've always prayed, God, give me a spirit of Job. If you took everything away, I'm not going to walk away from you.
You prayed that before?
This is before, and this is when I was younger. I've always loved the book of Job. And I've been blessed beyond my greatest imagination in the last 10 years my whole life, but since I got married, and just the testimony of me and my wife, and how everything has happened there, having an amazing job, amazing home, amazing family, two beautiful little girls.
You do, yeah.
And I can't, I've always prayed, like, God, if you ever took anything away, and I pray you keep me or help me to maintain this mindset when that trial hits. Because it's easy to talk about it.
Oh, yeah.
It's easy to say, God, I'm not going to walk away from you when something happens. But then a trial hits, and that, will show anyone's true colors. And not saying that I'm, the strongest person because I had this mindset, but I honestly, I was like, God, you allow this for a reason. And I told you this actually was it a connection?
Yeah, so I want to pause there and say it impacted me really big because it was just a private conversation between you and I. Brother Ryan Thompson, he preached on a Sunday night, which was March 3rd.
Right.
And it was a great service, and he preached necessary detours. And then we actually, for him, it was a necessary detour. He came, and by chance, there was a big issue that happened with him at the airport. He got his backpack stolen, his passport, and there's a story there. Remember that?
Yeah.
And then by happenstance, the backpack was found, and the person saw it and got in contact with someone from Brother Booker's church. They were able to reach out to him and to get more clarification on that. You can listen to the episode there on March 3rd. But he was able to get his passport and then come here. I remember I was with Brother Bradford when he called Brother Thompson. He was like, "You won't believe it, brother. This happened with my backpack." So there was an unnecessary detour for him to come here. And then we had an incredible offering that we gave him, which it was prophesied by someone from a church. You're going to go there and you can be blessed by people you've never even met. And he was incredibly. And so we had that service, and it was, it wasn't, we had just found out that this cancer had resurfaced. So it was new to everyone in the church. There's only a few that knew, but now everybody kind of knew at this time when he came. And then we had connection on Monday night. And I walked up to you and I was talking to you, and I was just, trying to offer whatever encouragement I could. And you answered me and you said, "Brother Jeremy," your words were, "I am excited for this journey that God has put in me in." That message was for me. This is a necessary detour, and I don't know what God's going to do, but it's a detour, and I'm excited for it. And it blew me away. I tried not to show any emotion, but I did go back and told a few people what you said, and it struck me, like, how can one say that with, a family, two beautiful young children, 29 years of age. You don't know what you're getting into. Here it's coming back. Our minds are geared to think the worst. And I will say from the onset, even from last year, you're saying all these worries you had and all these things that you were prepping yourself for and how to handle this. And I never saw, and I would probably say this for most people, they would say this: I never saw from you anguish or fear or worry. And it was all there, but it was never on the surface of you. Even your wife. And I know she kind of was helping in Bible quizzing, and this was a big, huge thing. So she had to pull back from some things, and rightfully so. But when you tell us that message was for you, it was for you. And you saying that, and the faith that you had when you said it, it was just unreal. It struck me as just, wow. It kind of shook my faith. Like, could I say that? So I remember that conversation.
I think what helped me is actually, and I don't know if well, I've never told you this, that this has stuck with me, what you said. It wasn't directly to me. I don't know if you said it in a message a very long time ago, when our Pastor Bradford, had gone through his chemotherapy, his cancer journey. But you had told either the church or at a youth event that he said when he was going through it, God Don't let my will be done, let thine will be done through this whole situation. That stuck with me my whole life. And every trial that I went through, I was like, okay, if pastor can go through this, if he can say that, I can get through this. And again, I wasn't expecting cancer to hit me. But I also told the Lord, I said, no matter what happens in life, I'm not going to stop serving you. I pray that I still have that same spirit, that if you took everything away from me, blessed be the name of the Lord. Lord giveth and he taketh away. He gives good health, and he takes away good health. He gives blessing, sometimes he takes blessing. And a trial hit, and of course I didn't really know how I was going to go through it. But then all those thoughts started to come back. And what you had said about what pastor had said, either to you, I don't know if he said that, publicly or not. But when I told you that, I had told my wife, I said, it's a weird feeling, but I feel honored to go through this.
Wow.
I've told a couple people that. But I was like, you know what? The Lord is choosing me to test. I don't know what he's going to do through it. Now we know, and I'm going to share what God actually, the miracle he did. But now again, I didn't know the end result. I didn't know how far it was going to spread, all of that. But I know God's faithful. And again, what gives me the peace is that everything happens for a reason. He allowed that to come back.
Yeah.
He's allowing me to go through this. I didn't know if it was for someone I was going to sit next to in the cancer infusion center, a nurse I was going to encounter. I don't know if it was the doctor, which I'll get into that. I'm trying to convince the doctor a miracle actually happened. But that's what stuck with me. And I will say, if anyone's going through a situation like this, God still sees you. He knows the situation that you're in. And he hasn't forgotten you, and all
Amen.
The prayers that you have, on your side, even if you feel that you're alone, he is still there. So yes,
I just want to interject.
Yeah.
That really is a powerful way to think, because the mentality is I'm going to live for God and I'm just going to be blessed, blessed, blessed. But we don't know how he's going to bless us. And he had to bless Daniel through a lion's den, right?
Right.
And those that were constantly attacking him. It had to take a lion's den for their sins to be revealed and that problem to be eradicated. But we never understand fully. I guess the true definition of trust is, God, it's in your hands. Let not my will, but thy will be done. It's easy to say. Jesus in the garden, that's what he prayed. He wanted that cup of gold to be taken away from him. And one can only imagine the pain that he knew as God that he was going to have to fleshly endure. And he's sincerely praying, take it away from me, but concludes with that attitude that you have. God, you know what you're doing. Thy will be done. So that is just powerful. And I think I'm talking to myself, because I want things to happen a certain way. And I'm sure a lot of people are like that. And when they don't, there's frustration. But maybe God is putting that necessary detour in your life, because it's not just about you. Who knows what's going to happen because of your testimony.
I've always said, God, I'm on this earth to serve you, and whatever you need me to do, say it, and I'll go. That's just been my prayers just throughout my life. And no matter what happens, I'm going to serve him through this whole situation. I will say, I'm not saying I didn't have a time where I was frustrated or was super scared, like you said. I don't want to show. I didn't want to bring any necessarily attention, like, woe is me kind of thing. I just wanted to put the trust in God, and again, that's what has always given me peace in life. No matter what happens, God's in control, and everything happens for a reason. It's just been kind of my, I don't know about motto or how you want to say it, but going, before I started treatment, he wanted to do a biopsy to confirm everything. Now I will say they didn't actually get to do the biopsy, but before in the last year, they had reviewed all the images and they knew what they were looking at. Everything was confirmed. It was officially diagnosed last year. So this year, the results came back. My oncologist scheduled a PET scan. And a PET scan is similar to a CT scan. It's just with the radioactive tracers. So the cancer actually attracts that tracer. And so the scan shows a concentration of where cancer might be in your body. And I heard someone say that, well, why doesn't everyone request PET scans? Well, it's radioactive stuff they're putting in you. So if you do, it's actually going to cause cancer to do that. But that proved that there was cancer as well. I got multiple doctors saying that, okay, yes, this is it. Well, my oncologist before treatment, the week before Tuesday, he said, I want you to, you're going to go get a needle biopsy. You know, if you can fill the mass, we should be able to get it. No problem. We'll confirm everything. We're still starting treatment no matter what on 18th. I said, okay, yeah, I'll go in and I'll do that. So I went in that Tuesday. They had done a couple samples, got a couple samples. Well, the results came back the next week as I started treatment saying that it was benign, but they had missed. And I was like, okay, well, what does that mean? I'm now in treatment. Like, what is this? But I knew, and even my doctor said he's very, very confident that it is cancer because of your history, of the PET scan, of all the other tests. So I'd gone through the first hard week, the power week. The next week, I had gone through the smaller infusion. And then the following week, so 2 weeks or 3 weeks, I believe, from the initial biopsy, my doctor said, hey, the original doctor and my doctor both said, look, we want you to come in for another biopsy. This time, instead of an ultrasound guided, we want you to do a CT scan guided. So in the scan machine, we'll have multiple doctors there. The tech will be there, all that kind of stuff. And we can see everything in detail. If, where this is, where the mass is, we'll be able to get the needle where we need to be. The doctor actually was very unsure when he did the first biopsy. Like, I don't know if I got it. We'll see how it comes back. We'll most likely have you come back. Well, I went in that day and I was just like, okay, this is what it is. Like, it's going to come back. I wasn't thinking anything of it. I was like, and I will stop here. I said this before when everything, in my own prayers, I was like, God, I know you can heal this mass. I know you can heal it. You've done miracles. I believe everything that you've done in the Bible, even though I haven't seen something like this or heard something at least this close to home, I know you can do it. But obviously you allowed me to start treatment. So in me and my wife's minds, like, we've accepted the battle of everything. And so we weren't actually praying for a miracle since the beginning, since I found out it spread. I was just like, okay, you allowed to come back. I'm going to go through it. Well, I went in and it's like, okay, the doctor came in before I went into the procedure. He said, okay, you're in your first round, right? I said, yes, I haven't actually finished. I'm finishing my first round today. Later on, I get my infusion. He said, okay, so, the chemo shouldn't have really touched it yet. It should still be relatively same size. You have 4 rounds total that you're going through. So it should be good. It should be a quick and easy procedure. We're going to put you in like a twilight zone, all that. So they put me in twilight zone. I'm like out of it. Not out of it enough to understand people, because when they told me, I'll give that detail in a second. But I get rolled in there.
Do you have your prayer blanket with you at this time?
No. Well, I did. Oh, and actually, thank you for reminding me on that. Sister Bean, thank you so much for, if you're listening to this, for making that, and everyone that prayed over that prayer quilt and prayer blanket. During the first power week, so it's 2 weeks prior to this second biopsy, each morning before I went into treatment, I wrapped myself in that blanket and I prayed, God, just give me strength. I wasn't praying for a miracle. I just said, God, give me strength to get through this. I know everyone is praying for me. Everyone's prayed over this blanket. And the first time I put that around me, the anointing that I felt just in my office, I was unexplainable. I knew God was with me. I knew the prayers of everyone that has been praying for me were with me. So I had peace, and this chemo was very intense. Monday, I felt great. Went home kind of, it is what it is. Tuesday, felt a little more weak. By Friday, I'm just hunched over. It was very intense. But all the prayers got me through it. But I'm glad you brought that up, because I did wrap myself every morning before treatment. So I get rolled into that procedure room. They put me on the table, prepped me for the CT scan. The same doctor that had done the procedure then came up to me. It was another doctor that came up to me in the room prior to this. And the original doctor came up to me as I was all strapped up, and he said, "Okay, hey, I know we missed. I'm sorry you had to come back in, but we're going to do a CT guided, and everything should be good. It should be procedure. We should be all good with that." I said, "Okay, great. Let's do this." So he ran me through the machine. The tech was back there on the computer running it. The two doctors were back there reviewing it live. And then they run me through it for a couple minutes, and they bring me back out. And the same doctor, along with, I think the tech came back after that, but the original doctor came up to me, just, this look on his face, like, so, we want to do this biopsy. It was there 2 weeks ago. I don't know what happened, but there's nothing there. And I was like, and again, I'm out of it. I still conscious, but I'm out of it. I said, wait. I asked him like 3 or 4 times, like, what do you mean it's not there? He goes, it's just not there. Like, the mass was there 2 weeks ago. The treatment shouldn't have touched it this much. I mean, and I was just like, and so again, I asked him a couple more times, and then he left, and the tech that was back there with them, that was leading it, the look in his eyes, I'll never forget. His eyes just wide-eyed. He goes, "Man, I've never seen that before." And I was like, and there was another nurse to the left of me. I just said, "Well, to God be the glory."
And she was
like, "Amen,
amen in it. Well, she wasn't apostolic.
Actually, it was the guy that was absolutely shocked. Yeah, I'm sure she was too. Yeah. But he was the one that we kind of made eye contact. He's like, "I've never seen that before." And now thinking about it, I was like, you know what? Maybe it was partly for him too. I never got to connect with him after the whole procedure. Again, I was still kind of out of it, but they rolled me back into the original prep room, and I'm starting to come out of this twilight zone now. And the original doctor, or the other doctor, not the one that did the first biopsy, he came into the room, and the nurses were prepping me, taking the IVs out and all that stuff. And he said, "Well, that was a change of events." And I said, "Yeah, I wasn't expecting that." He goes, "Well, count it as a miracle." He goes, "Because that doesn't happen." And I was like, "Well, yes." And the nurses that were in there were hearing it, and they were like super excited. And I was ecstatic. I wasn't showing it fully because I was still, kind of out of it.
Wow.
But he told me something. I will never forget this. And I put it I journaled everything through this whole journey because I didn't want to forget. There's too many details. But he said, "We have a file of cases that a board of doctors review that are unexplainable." He goes, "Your case is going to be put in that file because it doesn't make sense." And I said, "Well, awesome." Or something like that. I'm like, wow. And so then he left, and I just was left there like absolutely amazed. Wasn't expected. Not that I didn't believe he can do it, because as I said, I knew God can do it, but I wasn't praying for a miracle.
Wow.
I was praying, "God, just get me through this. Like, you allowed it to happen. Whatever your will is, let it be done in the end." Mm-hmm. And then that happened. And it wasn't shock as like disbelief shock. It was just like, wow. Like,
that numbing shock coming out of the twilight zone.
Yeah. I was like, that just happened. Like, I'm excited. I was so.
Was your wife around during this time?
She wasn't. She was picking me up.
Okay.
So she picked me up, and I got in. I wasn't bawling, but I was teary eyed.
Right.
She was like, "What's wrong?
I'm almost teary eyed right now, so it's okay."
She said, "What's wrong? What's going on?" And I said, "You won't believe it. I mean, you will, but you won't believe it." And she's like, "What happened?" I said, "They couldn't find anything." And she's like, "What? Like, they couldn't find anything. Nothing was there." And so, after that, I was like, okay, well, what's the next step? I mean, do I stop treatment? Do I continue? And it's gone and all this stuff. So I emailed my doctor. I gave him a call, and I was like, you got to get in contact with me. Like, what's the next step?
Yeah.
Do I go in for treatment next week? Like, do I go through the next few rounds? Well, he emailed back saying, I explained everything. I said, this is a test, this is a miracle. God did this. And I said, he said, well, I know we all believe in God, but I still want you to continue with treatment and this and this and that. And I was like, wait a minute, but it's gone.
Right.
So I go into the next week, and that Monday, and they email me saying that the doctor wants to talk to you. So I get in, they hook me all up. The nurse that was there, ready for my infusion, all that stuff, all the IVs. And so I'm waiting for the doctor. I'm like, okay, well, I guess I'm still going through treatment. But I have to test my blood levels, white blood cell count before each treatment, and actually it was too low. So they had to postpone it. But he came and talked to me. He said, like, hey, look, I want to do more tests. I want to do another CT scan. And I asked him, I said, actually, I convinced him to do it. I said, look, can we do another CT scan? I want to show you and prove to you everything's gone. Can we do another blood test? I want to show you that the tumor markers that were showing just 2 weeks ago skyrocketed higher than it was last year, that they're back to normal. I want to prove to you that everything's gone. He said, okay, well, your blood levels aren't showing that you should be taking this medicine today. We have to push it out a week anyways. He goes, but I still want you to go through the treatment, at least 2 more rounds. I said, okay, I believe, and I'll say this here, I believe God respects doing the due diligence. I know he did a miracle.
Oh, yeah.
But I believe, and you know what, I'm not going to sit here arguing with the doctor. Like, I don't want to go against the medical advice. I said, okay, I'll do 2 more rounds. Instead of 4, we'll do 3 total. Well, I do all the tests. The blood test came back right away. And the blood tumor marker that was skyrocketed just 2 weeks ago dropped down to below normal than it was before I even started.
Wow.
The normal level was, I forgot what it was, but it was well below the normal level. So I was super excited. Well, then the CT scan came back, and I want to clarify this. It showed that there was still something very, very small there. It was about 1 centimeter. Mm-hmm. And I was, at first I was like, wait a minute, a miracle happened. I believe everything was gone. And so doubt started to creep in a little bit. But I was like, no, everything's gone. I don't know why that's there or what this shows, but everything's gone. Well, the doctor came to talk to me. He clarified everything. He said, when you have a mass that big, when treatment hits it, it doesn't fully get rid of it. There will be some scar tissue left.
Yeah.
And so I was thinking, well, because the doctor wanted to give the credit, I believe, to the medicine. And I was like, no, the credit is going to go to God. And I will say this too, but it's on top of my mind. If they never missed that biopsy, they would have never done a second CT scan, live one, to show that it was gone.
Wow.
So I would have done another one sometime now, like in July, showing that, it's all gone. The treatment worked. Well, because he missed, the credit was given to God. It wasn't given to CT scan at the end.
That's awesome.
So, it was kind of frustrating in the beginning before I actually found out that I had to go in for a second biopsy and my levels are low. I'm going to the hospital, all this stuff. But the credit was given to God.
Right. And we always pray that too. We always pray God confound the minds of doctors, because the wisdom of man is foolishness to God. And I understand a doctor's standpoint where they're trained to see things and test results. But, it's amazing. You said doubt likes to creep in. And at the smallest hint of bad news, doubt is right at the door, ready to beat it down and say, God is not real. You are not healed. And I just want to interject here that Brother Bradford preached last night. And I think the way he said it, I hope I say it right. He said, virtue is going to flow. As much virtue is going to flow to you, as much faith as you put into it. So when the woman touched that hem of Jesus' garment, all of her faith was like, he can heal me, and he is going to heal me. And because of that amount of faith, the amount of virtue that came from Jesus healed her. And so that's a good stopping point to say, we need to reverse that. We need to say, at the very smallest hint of a miracle or God working, let faith be down the door and flood our minds and hearts. That's awesome.
We had some people actually when like my brother shared some right when it happened with his coworker, and he's like, well, I don't know, like the doctor should do more tests. And this is his coworker. I are you sure that happened? Because I don't know. I have some experience in that kind of field, and I don't believe. So, people were doubting this happened, but you're right. I believe God did everything. Whether he took it fully away, because I believe he can absolutely, I've heard the stories of a mass taken out from someone's body and then it instantly gone. I've never seen it myself, but at least for me, I believe I don't need to feel or touch or see everything myself. I believe God's going to do it. And that's true. The doubt started creeping. It's like, no, I know God did it. Whether he gave the power fully to that treatment, that chemo right in the beginning, like, hey, let's take it down to nothing. Because basically I've only had 6 days of treatment at that point. And if the doctor wanted to give the credit to the treatment, say, well, you're responding very well. That's what he kept saying. You're responding very well to the treatment. I said, well, what 12 weeks of treatment was supposed to do happened in 6 days. How does you explain that? And I've never seen someone take their glasses on and off so many times trying to figure out like, well, and he actually told me, my doctor, he said, this logically doesn't make sense.
Right.
This doesn't, but I still want you to go through it. So I agreed. And we came to a conclusion. We were very good terms. He's an amazing doctor. I give major kudos to him for dealing with this situation. And I believe God was working on him. And I testify that God did a miracle. And he brought the CT scan later on in my treatment, along with a PET scan showing the concentration, along with the size of the mass and the other mass. And it showed nothing was there. When I looked at the OCT scan, nothing was there. There was a little dot, but nothing. I mean, it went from, I can only give like a representation. I don't know what camera it is on, Reagan. It's on this one. But there was about this size, and it was about that on the other CT scan. And so in 6 days, and what 12 weeks it's supposed to do. And he said, these doctors that did that procedure, they know how to, them reading these, their, what was it? Ultrasound doctors they major in CT scan area. I'm totally butchering that, but they know how to read these scans. That's what they focus in and concentrate in. So he said they know more or how to read this better than I do. And them saying that, and then he didn't say this, but in my mind, like the doctor wouldn't tell me it's a miracle and put it in unexplainable events that focuses in reading these kind of scans if he didn't believe that was a miracle himself, a doctor. And I don't know his background. I don't know his beliefs and all that kind of stuff. But he said they know what they're looking at. And he believes that he reached out to them, showed it, talked with them, and they said, well, we believe it's just scar tissue that's left. He goes, like nothing's there. And showing the scans side by side, there's nothing. I mean, it just goes from this to absolutely nothing.
Incredible.
Some stuff is there again. And, I'm
6 days times.
6 days. Yeah, 6 days of treatment.
Wow.
And there were still, I don't know how many days of treatment, but, still 9 more weeks of treatment to be done. I went through the rest of the treatment, and again, it was just more of convincing my doctor that it had happened. And I rang the bell and finished treatment just a couple of weeks ago. Got my hair coming back.
Praise God.
My energy's back, my appetite's back. Chemo is not something that you want to go through. But, my final thoughts here is just if you're going through a similar situation, cancer, other sicknesses, any type of trial, God hears you. He knows what you're going through, and he's allowed that to happen for a reason. You just have to find what is that reason and how can I learn from it, and believe that God's going to bring you through. I don't know, not everyone has the story that I have.
Yeah.
And I'm very, very, very thankful for that. Being in that infusion center, I saw a lot of patients, a lot of elderly patients too, young people, elderlies, but these elderly people, I was like, wow, you have the strength to come in every day to get these infusions, knowing it's impacting my body. You can only imagine what you're going through. But some people don't have, my survival rate was very high. So I'm very, very thankful for that. And there's others that are going through situations that are a lot more severe than what I went through. But God still sees your situation.
Amen.
And I believe that God's going to let his will be done, whatever that is. And I'm just thankful. And I told God after that happened, I said, you know what, I'm going to share my testimony to everybody I can. And I started this podcast, me and the team, 2 years ago. And every time I felt like I got back up and running, something else hit. And whatever else hits, I'm going to keep getting back up and running. So if there's gaps, hopefully it's not the cancer coming back, but we're going to keep going. We're going to keep fighting for, keeping this ministry going. But I'm going to keep sharing my testimony. And I wanted to have the first episode back being kind of explaining what had happened with that. So, I hope it encourages somebody.
Oh yeah, it does. I don't know how it cannot. I don't know it. I mean, just to say, God, I'm going to do it. I'm not praying for a miracle. Just let your will be done. You just kept believing in God. I mean, yeah, you might have had questions and whys, but you never revealed it. Your spirit, I believe God healed you because you had great faith. You had more than faith. You had trust. Where whatever's going to happen, trust says, God, we go back to Daniel. I'm doing what I'm supposed to do. I'm praying 3 times a day, no matter my enemies, what they think, no matter the decrees the king has made, I'm praying. And that seemed like something that got him in trouble, but he just trusted God. We don't see him complaining. We don't find him, his faith wavering. He just trusted God. I really think because of your great trust in the Lord, he brought about a miracle. And I remember the night that your father, your family was here, and they told the church. And Reagan, I don't know if you were here that night, but just like the power of God that was there, the excitement that was there, and your parents and your family, they've been so supportive. Your brothers all shaved their head. Your dad shaved his head. I remember when they brought the prayer blanket up, and I remember talking just to the ministerial staff. I remember talking to Brother Johnson. He's like, man, how can something like this happen to such a great guy? Right? And then followed it up with, God's going to heal him. Brother Johnson said, God's going to heal him. And I amen that. I believe that. I know he will. So this testimony is greater than this segment, because there's more things that have happened that who knows what avenues. And I think that is another takeaway too. Trusting in the Lord. God, you just take the will. Whatever happens, happens. Your will be done. But then the impact that you're going to have, the testimony that you're going to be able to share to others, the willingness to do that, the lives that will be reached, maybe through this podcast, or maybe just from your day-to-day dealings with people. You have a beautiful family, and that alone is a blessing. I see God working there. So I'm excited, man. I couldn't contain myself whenever they told us the good news, like, your dad got up on the stage.
Yeah,
it was this big and it's gone. So
yes.
I
was watching during that service, and I was praising with everybody, because I believe God didn't just do a miracle for me, but I believe he's a wave of miracles. I believe others have happened. And I believe he's doing not just that, but a great revival is breaking out. Great things are happening, and I'm just excited. But before we end, I want to give a major shout out to my wife. She's been my absolute rock through this whole situation. It's been just as hard on me it's been on hard as her as it's been on me. We've both been, along with the kids, we've both been basically like COVID-19 again. We were
keeping yourself
away from everybody.
Yeah, I just saw a post where you finally got to go to the beach a couple weeks ago.
Yes, that was the first major outing before everything, and even then I was still being very careful. I go into the first time going out to a restaurant, I was like having a mask, no, I'm not going to wear, all this kind of stuff because I was worried, with the critical levels, all that. But, I want to shout out to my wife for everything that you've done. And I couldn't have done it without you, along with everyone else that I mentioned in the beginning. But yeah, I'm excited. I'm excited for what God did in my life, but what he's doing in all of your lives, in this church, in this city. And yeah.
One more question. What about the hair? Like, are you embracing the new do, or are you going to let it grow out, or you're going back and forth?
I was wearing a lot of hats when I first shaved my head. I was really kind of embarrassed.
Yeah.
Not that I shouldn't have been, but I actually heard people that had gone through chemo said the same thing. Especially if you had hair. If you didn't have hair, it's one thing. It's one thing for a guy, but for a woman, I can only imagine it's 10 times worse. But for me, yeah, I kind of embraced it. But then at the very end, actually just last couple of weeks, my eyebrows had started going. They're coming back now.
Yeah, I see
Everything's
that.
coming back now.
Yeah.
But I was like, oh man, what's happening? So I wore my hats again a little bit, but my wife had told me it's your testimony. Like it's showing what you had gone through. Not a lot of people had seen the first time, unless you knew me. But this second time, and I think that's why I kind of feared chemo in the first place. It was like, well, everyone's going to know visually. And I didn't want to let that be, something that doubt would creep in or whatever. It's hard to explain. But emotionally that kind of was playing a toll. But at the end I was like, you know what, God did a miracle. This is my testimony. I'm kind of writing it out. And now my hair's coming back. It's very thin and everything. But I'm excited to have it back. I am, to be honest with that. But I think I'm going to grow it out. Grow it back to not grow it out, but grow it back to normal length. I do miss it. We'll see.
Well, I just want to say thank you. Thank you for your steadfast faith and trust. It has impacted me and everyone I know. I know for sure it's impacted this whole church. But we're thankful that you're back in the saddle as the host for Loops, and we can resume that schedule of guests we were going to interview.
Yes.
And to all of you who are listening, here is the message. Lord, not my will be done, but thine be done. Amen. Thank you very much. God bless you all.